and this is the Road to Tarvalin podcast. Today, inspired by the new year, the year of the dragon, Tracy and I are talking about some of our favorite Rand al'Thor chapters and moments. And this episode will be pretty heavy spoilers. So if
Yes.
you haven't read the books,
The
this might
entire
not be
series.
yeah, this might not be the episode for you, but
If you don't care about spoilers, though, stick around because it'll be fun.
let's start kicking things off here. And with many of our episodes, we like to talk about characters, but
Mm-hmm.
we have not, in our almost 4 years, done a Rand centric episode yet. Uh, and I believe the chapter that you wanted to talk about comes
Mm-hmm.
before mine, so maybe
Mm-hmm.
we should start with yours.
Yeah.
Therefore, we've got a little bit more of a chronological order going on.
Yes. And I feel like this one actually ties in really well with the chapter that you picked out. Okay. So I picked out chapter 53 from Lord of Chaos, which I think is up there for like favorite books of mine as far as like the series is concerned. And part of it is this moment. The chapter title is Feast of Lights. So you don't necessarily, like, if it's your first time reading it, you're probably not thinking there's going to be torture somewhere along the lines in here. Like, but there is. Like,
Is this the chapter? It's the Perrin chapter, right?
it's actually, it goes back and forth. That's one of the things that I think is really cool about it is we have Perrin and then it's Galena and then it's, no, then it's Rand, then it's Galena again, then it's Savannah. And so, yes, torture and orgies. This is the very definition of Wheel of Time. Thanks, Hal. Or at the very least, a Feast of Lights. Like, oh my gosh. But this, like, one of the things about this chapter, because it does go back and forth, you do see what has happened to Rand from so many different perspectives and why and what's happening. I think this is one of those places where it's like the Dragon Reborn, regardless of name, is like everyone's business. And I love the political swirlings, the poisonings. That moment in Kyrian, so much happens. That moment with Sulin. Do you know which one I'm
Well,
talking about?
talk about it
Yeah,
because
it's the quote in here. I can't read this without crying. Like every time I read it, I'm like, ugh. But it's when Berelaine comes into Perrin's room and she's carrying Rand's sword, and they're like, there's no way he would have left without his sword. And then they start making all of these connections that Rand's been captured. Like he's not just on one of his like weird I'm leaving and not telling anybody missions. He's captured. And this is while Sulin is still meeting her toe and she's wearing like the livery of the palace and whatnot. And so
yes, I know exactly where this is going.
right. And so
Yes.
this is the moment all of the dots have connected. And Sulin says, they have taken him. Sulin wailed suddenly, shockingly, head thrown back, eyes squeezed shut. She moaned at the ceiling, and the sound of her voice was enough to make Perrin shiver. The Aes Sedai have taken my first. Oh God, I'm doing it. I'm crying. I hate that. The Aes Sedai have taken my first brother. Her cheeks glistened with tears, and I'm like, oh my God, what a heart-wrenching moment. And like you feel how like it's not just his rank. It's not just the fact that he's the Dragon Reborn that makes this so terrible. It's this very personal connection that so many people have. Like Perrin's like, even if I have to go alone, I'm getting Rand back. And Loyal's like, not alone, Perrin, never without me. Like, and of course then he's embarrassed and it's adorable and it's just like, oh, it just gets me.
So, would you say that you picked this chapter not just because it's a Rand centric chapter, but because it really signifies how he's basically the connective tissue to
Yes.
all of these characters wrapped around his Taviran pull, I guess?
Yeah.
It just kind of everything branches out from him.
Yes, exactly. Like there's a moment where Perrin's talking about like it's his internal monologue and he's like Sorolea is telling me to like keep my nose out of business that doesn't concern me. And I'm like, but when it comes to Rand, when it comes to the Dragon Reborn, it concerns everybody. And I feel like this chapter does such a good job of being like, these nobles wouldn't have been poisoned had Colivert not felt safe enough to make this step forward where she's like, I'm going to take the crown of Kyrian. And they're like, there's no way she would have done that if she didn't think Rand was never going to come back. She's committed murder. And we know how Rand feels about that. So
Mm-hmm.
this happens, and then Jobrain comes in, and he's like about he is about to gag and tie up Sulin for like hearing what has happened, until he realizes like he's not going to win this fight. She's actually a maiden of the spear. Like just all of these personalities, and then to get to the point in the camp where Rand has been imprisoned in a chest. Like this is that whole Rand imprisoned in a chest thing that pulls so hard, and it's just like, you want to know who like the not so great folks are? They're the people who keep people in chests. That's
Yeah.
terrible. But it's all to get him to Tarvalon. Everything that's been done is another maneuver because he's the Dragon Reborn. Galena doesn't see him as human, really. He's a weapon, he's a tool that she has to like mold, also known as beat, into the person she wants him to be when they arrive at the tower. But yeah, so it really does come down to like where Galena is. I don't, she's so cold and calculated the way that she goes through what she's doing. Like she always feels very even keel. And so her POV is like, I appreciate it. It's just another interesting point of view that we get in the story, and like why she has him. And we know, like, because we've read the books, Galena's Black Aja. So once again, we have someone really important to the series, probably the most important person in the series, captured by the Black Aja again. Not Rand being captured, but just that they've managed to do that. Like the connections of the Black Tower inside, or not the Black Tower, the White Tower of the Black Aja is. I mean, if I were living in that world, I would find it like just soul crushing to know how many people in power were sworn to the dark, you know?
Yeah. Honestly, that prologue in The Great Hunt does such a great way
Mm,
of solidifying the fact that everywhere you look,
mm-hmm.
every echelon of power and nation and class, like there are dark friends
Everywhere.
everywhere, and that should be frightening to the
Right?
reader. And I
Right?
know for me, especially as I was going through, I got it when I read, that prologue, but it wasn't until Lord of Chaos where I was really getting the sense of dread,
Mm,
where
mm-hmm.
we've got Mazrim Taim who shows up, and Luce Theron inside of Rand is just screaming, like
Mm,
wailing. And then you have Davram Bashir, who's like, no, absolutely not, Rand. No, do not align yourself with this man. And then on the other hand, we have Mogideon, who's quote unquote captured, but she's Mogideon. So it's like, and then you've got Elida over here doing Elida things.
right.
And it all culminates basically with this chapter that
Yep.
you're talking about.
Yeah. And one of the things that Galena mentions in the chapter, and it points to that whole political, that whole Black Aja influence, where she's like, Alviren has not been able to contain Elida's will. And she's like, they miscalculated. Like they thought Elida was going to be easier to control. And Elida was like, fuck that. Wrong person to think you could like push her around. And so she's not only eager to get back to the tower because she'll have the dragon reborn in tow and in the place where he can be most useful according to how they're thinking about things, but she also wants to get a handle on Alvier and in return get a handle on Elida, who is the most powerful woman basically in the Westlands. So it's all about that climb to power. And the Dragon Reborn like just sits right in the center of it. And then him like losing it when he realizes that Min's there and killing two warders. Do you find that believable? Like with his bare hands, do you find that believable?
At this point in the story, yes.
Okay.
I mean, he's been hanging out with the Aiel for a while. I feel like
Yeah.
at this point he should know a few tricks.
Oh, yeah. You know what? To me, I'm like Rand the sword fighter. And somehow I'm just like completely blocking out all of like his insistence that if he was going to learn how to fight with a sword, he would learn how to fight with his hands the way the Aiel do. So that, yeah, okay, that feels far more believable.
I mean, you hear about people, this is awful, but you hear about people nights like tonight, New Year's, people are out drinking, getting in bar fights. How often does something like a simple bar fight end up
Yeah.
where someone gets hit hard, just, fists, and ends up like that's enough? Like that's all it took. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I mean, this situation though, like the rage that he's feeling and how unwavering he is for his feelings of men. He's gone red at this point, and he's thinking about men.
Mm-hmm.
This time that he spent in the box,
Mm.
yeah, I think it is believable. If I think about, like, if I went through something like this,
Mm-hmm.
I'd assume I'd feel similar. Like, especially if it was someone that I loved, someone that I deeply cared about, that I knew was tortured as well.
Right?
And I
Yeah.
mean, look, they aligned with the wrong side.
Totally.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not out here being like, yes, killing, fine. No, not that at all, but understandable, yes.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other part about this chapter is like we're getting ready for probably the most infamous battle in the Wheel of Time, I think. Like I can't think of another moment that feels the same as the Dumai's Wells battle.
Yeah, absolutely. It's if you were to split the entire series into two acts, right? Part one, part two,
Yeah.
Dumai's Wells, it's pretty much right smack in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
This would be the climax of part one. Like, it
Yeah.
really is. It's an excellent chapter. I know why people love it. That it's just so much adrenaline, but
Oh God, yeah.
there's also, a heavy smattering of heartache and torture and sadness. And I know we've talked about this so many times. Like this chapter is just there's many ways to look at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think again, like that comes back to the fact that like the Dragon Reborn is a different entity to different groups of people. And like some people see him as human. Like Galena is surprised by the rage that Rand feels finding out that Min has been imprisoned, which I feel like gives away the fact that she just doesn't see him as a human being. Like he wouldn't have emotions, like he wouldn't flip the fuck out that somebody he loved. I see how he gets to that point. Like while he's where he is in the chapter that you chose. Like I feel like this is our beginning of where Rand is like whittling away at his own humanity. As the one Aes Sedai, I think it's Ariel, something like that. She's green and the two warders that Rand killed were her warders. And so Galena allows her to be the person to punish Rand for trying to break through the shield, which of course he's going to try to do. But while he's being beaten, he like refuses to give her anything other than like a shudder. He doesn't cry, he doesn't scream out in pain. Like at one point he smiles at her just to piss her off.
There's a lot going on in this
Yeah, there's so
chapter.
much. I was like, okay, where was I taking that? Because maybe it's just like the lack of humanity. And then, oh, how he's whittling away at his own humanity. So while he's being beaten, he has this like litany in his head, like this mantra of like never again. This is what happens when you trust an Aes Sedai. You can never, ever, ever trust an Aes Sedai again. he just repeats this over and over again in his head. It's all that keeps him from feeling the pain. And when the pain finally stops, he's almost unaware of it.
He's gone numb.
How could you not? And when I think about these moments, like these torture moments, I have to think about Robert Jordan's military background when he served in the military and the possibility of him having firsthand accounts of what it felt like to be tortured. I feel like he would probably be really aware of that. And he uses it really well to like a dark effect. Like it's not like, yay, torture, but like, wow, this feels so real, you know?
Yeah, yeah. I think with this series, in comparison to some other fantasy series that I've read, it's interesting because I've read series that were written by people who are very much, in the exact same age range,
Right.
where one author didn't go to war. He was what is that called? Like a
Conscientious
object,
objector.
objector. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Where they weren't in war, but the message behind their scenes that they write of war are so
Mm,
incredibly similar in feel and tone and in message, where Robert Jordan had that firsthand experience, and you can
mm-hmm.
tell, like, him looking back on it, it's not glorifying it. He's saying, like, look, this messed people up.
Big time.
You see it in Rand how he reacts every time someone in his presence is killed, someone that he cares about, or even just one of the maidens. It sticks with him and it just shaves him down to this fraction of a human that he was. Like, it really affects
Yes.
him. I really like that about Robert Jordan's writings. And I think in this chapter specifically,
Mm-hmm.
it's so visceral. And of course, you get the people who are understandably hype about it because, like, Rand's our guy, right? You're rooting for him. So when he busts out of that box and just he's stilling Aes Sedai left and right and killing warders, and then you've got the Ashaman coming in and just like mists of blood, like the air is blood. It's like,
Yes.
ah, you know.
And the wolves. And the wolves. Like,
Can't forget about the wolves.
this is one of those areas where like I'm getting goosebumps. Perrin has already made the choice that he's calling the wolves into this battle. He needs every resource he has, and he knows a lot of wolves are going to die. But he also knows that not a single one that finds out about it will turn down the chance to fight. And Jesus Christ, canines are terrifying. They are so strong. Like, I would want I would want an army of wolves on my team too.
You know what? One of my favorite moments of this part of the books is it's not even the battle itself. It's when the horses start to get spooked because Perrin, well, the horses and Perrin, they start hearing wolves howling, and he's like, thousands. Like, the
Mm.
amount of howls in the air is just like, it consumes like everything that's happening like in my
Yeah.
brain. That's the only thing I can think of and see and hear where I'm like, oh my God, that many.
Yes.
That many. Like, they came
Yes.
like from the forest, they came from over here, like the plains wolves, the forest
They
wolves,
are
the red wolves,
all
the black,
there.
all
Yes.
all the species have come together running for days on end for this chance
Yep.
to free Shadow Killer. And it's
Right?
like,
Because
it's
he is
so good.
important to everyone. Like that's where this hits so hard is like there's this part where parents thinking about like what their odds are. And in his mind, they have 6 Aes Sedai to worry about, and in reality, it's like 33. And he knows like his forces are gonna be kind of on the small side, but he's like when he asked Ruark for spears, Ruark's like, we can't take that many away. Like the Shadow might come through and like wreak havoc
Yeah.
here, and Perrin is like, worth it. What is that compared to the loss of Rand, the loss of the Dragon Reborn? Like,
Right.
This,
Who cares if Kyrian falls if the
right?
Lord Dragon is dead?
Right? And I mean every human and creature that has sworn loyalty to Rand, but almost more importantly, who Rand represents, the dragon, Shadow Killer, the Cormor, the Karkar, and like all of the things that he is
Lord of
connects.
the Morning, all of the
Right.
names.
Like he has so many connecting things. And like I feel this is one of those places where my heart really breaks for Rand because when this is over, Rand isn't who he was. He will not become that person again for a very long time, which is why I'm like really excited about your chapter because like this is where Rand like hardens and just works so hard to
Well,
distance
yeah,
himself.
you've picked the climax of Act
I feel like I
1,
almost cheated.
and I've pretty much picked the climax of Act 2 in terms of the Rand story, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Not the general story, but the Rand story.
And it's so like I'm so thankful even though this is the Rand that comes out of the box and is the guy that we're like following for a while and we're kind of like cheering for him and also like really worried about him. I feel like Rand makes a really good protagonist because in moments he does feel so human. And it's something that I don't know if I realized fully until like I compared these two chapters directly. And I was like, wow. Like he even started to believe that he wasn't human anymore. He was trying so hard to just be the prophecy fulfilled without seeing the way that he did bring people together. It takes him a really long time to get past all of the death and the destruction to see the life and hope that brought so many people to his side. And that's one of the really heartbreaking things I feel like that happens at the end of Lord of Chaos is like he's fixated on the wrong things and it's really detrimental to him.
And I would say, too, a little bit of that, maybe a small fraction of the things playing into that. And after looking over the chapter that I've chosen and some of the ones kind of before and after it,
Mhm.
Luce Theron, man, just, I don't really know if it's always, it's not so much like Luz and Rand as one
Mhm.
as it is the taint on Sidene kind of corrupting
Mhm.
this whole two men becoming one, what
Mhm.
Rand is thinking, if he's really believing what he's thinking is Luce Theron, or if it's him going mad. But that aside, the things that he's getting from Luce Theron, some of the things that he's hearing in his own head are really
Mm.
contributing to Rand pushing people away and hardening himself and becoming what he thinks is unbreakable. But I want to ask you if there was anything else from your chapter that you wanted to touch on before we move into some of these later chapters.
You know what? I don't think I do.
All right. I really have this attachment to the Veins of Gold chapter in The Gathering Storm. And before we dive into that, I kind of want to set the stage because going right into that chapter doesn't hit as hard without like taking a couple steps back and looking at the events leading up to it.
Mhm.
If we go back to chapter 44, Rand's coming back from this meeting with the Borderlanders. And at this point in time, Lan is off in the Blight. Nynaeve is trying to talk sense into Rand, being like, hey, look, Lan's going to die. Like, we need to do something. And Rand is saying things that are just so callous. Like, you know what? Who am I to deny him that? We all deserve that chance to find peace. And it is just like, oh, like going back and reading that, I'm like, oh, I forgot. I forgot that those were the things he was saying. And it hurts. It's so tragic, right? Rand is so mistrustful. He even runs into Huron at one point, and he thinks it's a trap. So he's like holding Huron, like suspending him
Oh
in
my
the
God.
air. And this is like, it breaks me because the moment Huron shows up, he is so excited to see Rand. He's like,
Right?
the Lord Dragon, the Lord Dragon, like it's you. I'm so, he's overjoyed to see Rand. And Rand is like holding him up in the air and making him answer these questions to prove that it's really him.
Right?
And
Oof.
Rand is completely, he's lost his way in so many different ways, even. And then if you move a little bit forward, we got Rand totally willing to let Lan die in the blight.
Yep.
Then we get back to the Stone of Tyr. This whole failed meeting with the Borderlanders has really just soured everything for him. And he's walking in the Stone of Tyr and thinking about how this building, the stone that it was carved in, is alien and it's not even human. And
Mm,
he's like, yeah, that's like me. And he's thinking about himself like, wow, like my shoulders were created to just bear the weight of humanity and prophecy, and it's just crushing his soul.
yeah.
I don't remember if it's Rand or Luce Theron, but they're talking about this, duality. Two hands, one hand to destroy and the other hand to save. And he's
Mm-hmm.
looking at his hands and he's missing one. And he's like, which one do I have? Is this hand that I have left the one to destroy, or is it the one to save?
Wow.
And what I love about this Veins of Gold chapter is it really brings home the big thematic message of the entire story. You've got the side of the shadow, right? You have people like Ishamael, who is saying, well, I guess Moradin, who's saying, look, the wheel keeps turning, suffering keeps happening. Why should anyone live through this? And Rand, at this point, he's gone to that same philosophy.
Yeah.
He's become what he's trying to fight against, right? This is how he sees the world. Then we get, oh my gosh, this is going to break me.
Mm,
But we get the
I'm
moment in the
here for
Stone of
you.
Tyr where Cadsuane has brought in Tam. And obviously, Tam is overjoyed to see his son. They're kind of, reminiscing, and Tam's like, where's, that wide-eyed boy? Where
Mm-hmm.
did he go? And Rand is just like, he's dead.
Yeah.
And they're talking about like, well, how did you get here? What happened? And Rand learns that Cadsuane is the one that sent Tam. And this, he just loses it. He
Yeah.
grabs hold of Saidin. He almost kills his own father.
Yeah.
And he's like thinking to himself, I'm doing it again. I'm a monster. And, while he's holding Saidin, he blips a little gateway to Ebu Dar. And he's like, that's it. It's time. All of these feelings that I have, all of this rage, all of this sadness, all of the weight, he decides in that moment he's just going to go take out the Shan Chen. And not only is he just going to, and I say take them out, but he's ready to destroy all of Ebu Dar with the one power. He's got the
Yeah.
access key to the Choden Call. At this point, his rage leaves him, and it's just, pure loathing. And as he's walking this bridge in Ebu Dar, he's thinking about his tactics and how he's going to destroy this city. And as he's doing it, he's watching these innocent people just go along their day. And
Yeah.
he's thinking like, wow, like they don't know what's coming. And as he's grabbing hold of Saidin and he's ready to just let it rip and destroy the city, the taint on Saidin manifests in him so hard that he doubles over, he's laying on the ground, he's vomiting.
Yeah.
And as this is happening, these, innocent passerbyers, like just these people going on their, daily things and lives, stop to see if he's okay. And
Mm-hmm.
it kind of hits him in this moment. Like, I was about to kill these people, but here they are concerned for me. This is the moment where he blips again, and then
Mm-hmm.
he's in a field somewhere, and then he's on Dragon Mount. And
Mhm.
then this is like all of these things, all of this badness, sadness, gloom, doom, all of the things that he's feeling, he gets there and he's like, why am I here? Why did I come here? And this is that moment where, you know, the two become one and Rand slash Luce Theron is like, because we made this. This is where we died.
Yeah.
And he's thinking about all of these things, like what it means to be the Dragon Reborn. Is he just
Mhm.
a symbol for the people? Is he a sacrifice? Is he just, you know, someone who was meant to sacrifice himself for the world? Is he the hand that destroys, or is he the hand that's, you know, the protector? In typical Robert Jordan fashion, like this chapter gets very biblical.
Mm.
It is very
Yep.
it is very like Old Testament
You are
like
not wrong.
and he's also questioning, you know, am I just this puppet trying to play the part over and over again? And he's yelling and screaming and thinking about how, what if everything's just meaningless? And when I talked about the duality and what the theme of the overall story is, and how Rand at one point is becoming more enlightened to the same philosophies that Moradin and Shamael are thinking,
Yeah.
he kind of goes back and forth with Luce Theron, and he's like, why do we do this? Why do we live over and over again?
Yep.
And it, you know, like it could be a little bit cliche, but Luce Theron is just like very direct and clear-headed, and he's like, it's so we can have a second chance,
Mm.
because every time that we're reborn, we get a second chance and we get that opportunity to love people again.
Yeah.
As soon as that clicks into place for him, he's just like, holy shit, that's the answer. Like, that's
Mhm.
it. To say that The Wheel of Time is a story about duality and balance, like, yeah, of course it is. Like, if you ask someone what the theme is, it's probably going to be somewhere along those lines.
Yeah.
But this moment in the story is pretty much the moment that makes it the theme. Up until this spot, you don't really get that
Mhm.
distinct, like, ah, there it is.
Yeah.
That's what I was waiting for.
Mhm.
That's what I was looking for. And Rand finds it, the reader finds it, you get it. When you're thinking about this world and this landscape, I think about myself, and I probably would be on Shamael's side where I'm like, this is whack. Like, I am sorry. I did not sign up for this. No, thank you. But especially if you're someone like Rand, like he just
Mhm.
what gets spit out of the pattern over and over again
Yeah.
to feel the crushing weight of sacrifice
Yeah.
again and
Yeah.
again.
Yeah.
And it's just awful. It is so terrible. And the thing about this moment where he's remembering the people that he's loved and he's remembering the moments where he's felt at peace and he's felt
Yeah.
joy and he's felt hope, and it's very like, ah, like the enlightenment comes.
Yeah.
And I love all of that for Rand. It's such a great moment for the story. It's such a
Mhm.
epic moment, and I think it's a
Mhm.
really profound moment. Is it the most exciting, and you know, there's not that big like adrenaline junkie moment like the
Mm-mm.
one that you picked, but it is really profound and it really makes you think. So like love this chapter. But I think the thing that really just hits me hard is the next Rand chapter after this one,
Oh.
because it is so cool. Like it, oh, like I love it so much. And that's, you have to go to the next book. You have to go past the prologue and then you have to get to chapter one. And
Mhm.
that's when we meet Almon Bunt, the apple cart
Yes.
driver,
Yes.
all the way
Yes.
back from the Eye of the World. And I'm like,
Yes.
oh my gosh, it's him. And Almond Butt, he sees Rand and it's like, it's you. It's so cute though, and setting the scene, you know, he's out in his orchard with his, I want to say, sons,
Yes.
and everything's dead. Like everything is dying. And he's thinking, like, well, I don't know much about orchards, but I think this is wrong. I don't think an entire crop of apples is supposed to fall and rot overnight.
Yeah.
And
Just a
then,
guess. Just a guess.
right? And when I think about this chapter, I mourn the loss of Almon Bunt. I do. I really do. I wish the show would have included him because this moment is so good.
Same with Hearn, though, too.
Yeah. But we have this moment where Almon Bunt's standing there just thinking about his rotting crops. And then, like, he feels the sunlight on his face.
Right?
And he's like, oh, it's so nice and warm and comforting. And it reminds him of his wife's sourdough bread baking. And everything's like all peaceful for a moment. And then he's smelling apple blossoms. And he's like, wait, what? And then, like, within moments, all of the trees are blossoming.
Yep.
And these, like, dead apples are just disappearing. And Almond is like, I've gone mad. Like, I've lost it. What is happening?
Yeah.
And then we see Rand in, like, these ragged clothes walking down from the foothills of Dragon Mount.
Right.
And
NBD. It's fine.
Yeah. He's even thinking, like, who would be coming from that direction? There's nothing there.
Yeah.
Just the mountain. And he looks, all the apples have, like, regenerated, like, immediately in Rand's presence. And I think Rand is just like, hey, you, gather those apples quick. As soon as I'm gone, my presence will hold it off for a time, but as soon as I'm gone, the Dark One's touch will make everything rot again.
Yeah.
And then, like, Almond goes running and he's yelling, the whole village pretty much, because nobody has any food at this point. Everything is rotting. And he's just like the town crier, like ringing the bell, yelling for everyone, like, hey, everyone, now come quick. We've got to harvest these apples.
And now we need to do it now. Hurry.
It's such a fun chapter, but
no, it
really embodies this, like, Rand is Jesus moment. Like, there is something more to him where he's got this, now he has this whole, like, supernatural air.
Yeah.
Where he's, like, completely enlightened. He is two men who has become one. He's seen both sides of the argument. And it all really culminates to this moment. And this just sets him down his path to the point where we can get the end of the story, where we can get to that last battle, we can get to those final moments. And this is all the things that he learns in these few chapters that I've talked about, the Choden Call versus Kalendor, all of it gives him the tools to walk into Tarmangaiden and make the right decisions that he needs to make for things to end up okay.
Absolutely. I feel like when he has this, like, big revelation moment, like, it kind of comes down to love is everything, which is a really beautiful thought. And when you put it into action, the way that he approaches the last battle, his battle, like, it's not a battle the way that we normally would think of. It's very, like, kind of metaphysical. But that revelation for himself, this idea of love and hope and regeneration, that's what carries him through. And I think that this is such a beautiful point in his story.
I can't imagine this going any other way for him, where, he's, like you said in the chapter that you're talking about, Lord of Chaos era Rand, Queen DR Rand. It makes sense. It's hard to read, but it makes sense that he would go down that path. But to think about things on the other side, well, yeah, like, maybe things could be okay if you're given this chance of, the wheel spinning and time repeating itself, which, again, another one of these big themes of the story, it is the wheel of time. And as cheesy as that sounds and as obvious as that is, it really is giving him a chance to reclaim a little bit of peace and joy in the world that is so dark. he's got all of these memories of Lews Therin. So
Mm-hmm.
he's thinking about, Lews Therin killing his own wife, and it's a good little ending to this part of Rand's story, or I guess maybe more of a beginning to this part of his story. I don't know. When I think about in terms of the TV show, it would be so tragic if we didn't make it that far, if we didn't
Right.
get to see Veins of Gold. And I
Yeah.
mean, especially with Yosha Stradowski reading the entire series, I can imagine he's, like how it would be heartbreaking if he just didn't
Right.
get to this point in the story.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, they are doing a really good job of setting up these themes that are coming out in both of these chapters. They're doing a really good job of setting those up in the TV show. The way that Ishamael talks about it, the way that they did like the beginning of the finale episode, they're doing a really good job of like getting us amped for that point and aware of it. And I think that that's kind of incredible because it is such a big part of the story. Like, there's a reason why it's called Wheel of Time.
Yeah, it makes sense that they would bring in a lot of the ideology of Moradin to Ishamael's story earlier on.
Yeah.
Hopefully, if they get here.
Yeah.
I was also thinking about with your chapter with Lord of Chaos being the end of book 6. So
Mm-hmm.
that's, like I said, right smack in the middle.
Yeah.
If Rafe Judkins gets his 8 seasons like he wants, that should make Dumai's Wells the end of season 4,
Yeah.
which is wild.
They have to get through so much. They're just gonna have to do so much cutting. Like they're just gonna have to be ruthless
Well,
to
yeah, I
like get
mean,
to the core of it, like get to that point if that's the direction they take.
if season 3 is mostly the Shadow Rising and they need to get to Dumai's Wells at the midway point,
Yeah.
that means the Fires of Heaven and Lord of Chaos will be, really condensed.
Mm-hmm.
I do not envy them.
Neither do I. And really honestly respect for people who work really hard to like condense something like this and make it quality because it's good. Like the source material is just so good, which we've said several
Yeah,
times.
especially, I mean, just looking at Tracy and I trying to pick out what are the best Rand moments for us. If you look at his entire story, it would be really hard to whittle down those choices.
Mm-hmm.
But, if you stand back and look at the entire series as a whole, what are those big moments that have to be shown?
Yeah.
It would be very, very difficult to decide. We've got 8 seasons. We have to pick this many plot beats, and this is what we
Yeah.
can show. And
Yeah.
what that means from a storytelling perspective is when they're only picking this many, that means the connections, like the point A to point B from this plot point to the next plot point,
Mm-hmm.
it has to be reconstructed because it won't fit anymore. Every situation calls for changes when you're trying to pick and choose which moments go in. I understand some people being very upset by changes
Mm-hmm.
in general, but I also understand that from a storytelling aspect, you can't make it the same
Yeah.
when you don't have the amount of time because you can't leapfrog from one plot point to the next and have it make sense without
Mm-hmm.
changing
Right.
the moments in between.
I'm really hoping that we get to these points. I mean, seriously, Do Might Wells is screen gold. If they somehow manage to fuck that up, I will be so sad.
I think it's one of these situations where everybody wants. Why
Uh,
can't I think of it?
Helm's Deep.
Yes,
Thank
yes,
you,
yes.
Rapunzel 347. Thank
Everybody,
you.
I feel like the Wheel of Time fans, we really deserve our Helm's Deep
Yeah, we do.
moment.
Yeah, we do.
It is going to be so hard to do. It is going to
Yep.
be so expensive.
Yep.
But I will sacrifice a lot of the fires of heaven and a lot of Lord of Chaos
Mm-hmm.
to get this moment. Visually in my head, not always can I envision what something looks like,
Yeah.
but shockingly, this moment I can.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's just, honestly, I feel like they should probably do it season 4
Yeah.
because season 4 hasn't been confirmed yet. Like, we still don't have confirmation on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't think of an episode of television that would be more incredible to see than this moment in terms of like, you want the adrenaline? Okay, we'll
Mm-hmm.
give it to you.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, how's this for you? Could we give you
Right,
anything more? There's magic, there's
right.
wolves, there's sword fighting, there's emotional destruction. Like, it's so good. It's so good. Like, I feel as though, like, if they didn't go, like, if Rough Jadekins, ha ha ha, if Rafe Jenkins didn't go not Helm Deep. Oh my God, when
It's
he went to
okay. It's
like I
okay.
can't I am so excited. But if he wasn't like, do my as wells, do my as wells, this whole thing, do you guys know what this would look like on screen? Like the stuff leading up to it, that's really good too. But this, you want to see this on screen. Everybody wants to see this on screen. I think they did a really good job wrapping up season 2 with what happened in fall. And that was just like one small ish battle. So if they can pull that, I mean, it's chaos. It's chaos. Thinking about how to pull that together, it is chaos. Whew, I'm excited.
Yeah, in my opinion, Falma was quite a bit scaled back than I envisioned it,
Yeah. Yeah.
but I was okay with it. Like,
Yeah.
the way that it was shot, I
Mm-hmm.
generally enjoyed. When I think of Dumai as Wells, I really hope that they're able to afford
Mm-hmm.
this massive pitched battle similar, like, I want the scope of it to be similar to, it doesn't have to be like Helm's Deep. We don't need like CGI millions of soldiers. That's
Mm-mm.
okay, we don't need it to be that big,
Mm-mm.
but
Well, I mean, it's
I
not that big.
it's
Like,
not, but I hope that it still has that air of large scale battle. Where in Falm you had, the two
mm-hmm.
factions running on that balustrade. And that worked, in
Mm-hmm.
my opinion.
Yes.
But when I think of Dumai as well, as I'm like, okay, that's a lot more extras. That's a lot more people. And I think
Yeah.
the measure for how Dumai's Wells will look is
Mm-hmm.
what we get in season 3 with the Battle of the Two Rivers. And I think after seeing that, we can maybe get an idea of how the television series decides to envision,
Mm-hmm.
these bigger battles.
Yeah.
In the words of in the words of Loyal after he closes the Waygate, thousands of Trollocs. Thousands. They're coming.
Thousands.
So
Oof. That's exciting. That's also not a bad place to wrap up if you don't have anything more to add.
I am good. I want to thank everybody who joined us today. It
Yay!
was really nice to see some new faces.
Agreed.
Keep an
Love it.
eye out. We will be doing this off and on. We do this every week for our patron members, but
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we open it up to everybody. And thanks so much for joining us. To the people
Yeah.
listening when this comes out, happy 2024,
24.
happy Year of the Dragon. Let us know if you had some other Rand favorite moments, maybe some of your favorite moments that you think would be really good fits for the
Mm.
best of Rand al'Thor,
Mm.
Rand al'Thor's greatest hits.
That'd be fun. I feel like there are so many characters we could do greatest hits of. That would be really, really fun to do. Like, really
Yeah,
fun.
it would. We'll have to start doing this for all of the
I
characters.
think we might need to because this was super fun. I had a great time.
Me too. So
Awesome.
with that, we will say goodnight. Happy New Year's. Thanks for listening,
Thank
and we will
you.
see you back next time.